likely see tractor trailers every day on the road, but what you may not know is how potentially dangerous they are. Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Megan Glova. We are joined by WRAL Investigates reporter Randall Kerr to talk about what's being done to make sure our roads and highways are safe with these very large vehicles on them. Randall, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So the focus of your and Sarah Kruger's latest Investigates piece is the Motor Carrier Safety Assistance Program. Who does that consist of and what's their goal?
Yeah, it's a special unit of the North Carolina State Highway Patrol, and their goal is really to make sure that all of those big rigs that we share the road with are safe to be on the road, not just the truck itself, but to make sure the driver is also following the rules.
Yeah, I'm one of those people who does not like to drive beside tractor trailers, so that's honestly a relief for me to hear that there's a program like this in place. So one spot MCSAP may inspect a tractor trailer is at those weigh stations along the highway. What are they looking for during those inspections?
There are 3 or 4 different levels of inspections that they do at these weigh stations. And usually the weigh stations, they're just checking to make sure that the load is secure, the load is what it is, to make sure the truck isn't too heavy because they do have weight limits. Obviously, the bigger they are, the longer they take to stop if there's a problem. Depending on kind of a visual inspection of the truck, they may do a very thorough inspection where they actually get under the truck. I mean, they, like a mechanic, they really look for everything. Sometimes it's just a walk around. If they see a tail light or tires that are bald, they'll do that and issue fines depending on what they see, and the fines can get pretty heavy.
And what's MCSAP's role on the road? They can also inspect outside of those weigh stations, right?
Yeah, if they flash their lights to a truck driver, they don't have to see the truck driver break any traffic violations. They can, even if the truck may look completely fine, they may just decide to pull it over. I mean, there's a database where you can look up if you notice when you drive past trucks, you look at them, they have what's called a DOT number on there. Mm-hmm. And so every trucking company has that specific number that's almost like their social security number. And so you can go to a database and type in a DOT number and get that trucking company's history. So if these troopers, I'm sure, know that there may be some companies that don't have a very good track record, and they'll pull these trucks over, and they don't have, like you said, no probable cause, which is different than any other type of law enforcement stop that you usually see. They can pull over. They have the right to pull them over at any time and do a quick inspection.
And were you or Sarah able to find out, was there a specific incident or string of incidents that kind of led this unit to be formed, or is it just the sheer number of trucks that's moving through North Carolina?
Yeah, it's been in place for years, but obviously, with our state growing, where it is on the eastern seaboard, and with the large number of miles of interstate we have, so between 40 and 95 and 85, and some of the new interstates, they're out, going north to south out of the Charlotte area. North Carolina's truck volume is among the tops in the entire country.
And kind of jumping back to just reasons for these inspections, how about cell phone use? That's an ongoing problem for seemingly all drivers, but of course, it's a little more scary with a vehicle of this size. Is that something MCSAP is looking for specifically as trucks pass by?
Actually, the patrol as a whole does that.
That makes sense.
They actually have a special AI system that uses cameras, and it travels around the state. They put it on different interstates because in North Carolina, state law is truck drivers can't even have a phone in their hand.
Oh, wow.
So for you and I, an officer would have to prove that we were texting,
right?
Which is impossible to do. I mean, I've done stories where we've talked to law enforcement officers and prosecutors, and really, you can look at your phone and be reading the internet or typing in a Google search, but it's not texting, and our law specifically says texting.
Interesting.
So it's a really hard thing to do. With truck drivers, if this camera catches a truck driver just holding the phone, that's enough. And, just like you'll see with, speed traps where they have, troopers lined up on the side of the highway, they'll put them a couple miles down the road, and they'll get a hit on that camera, and they have the right to pull them over right there. That's all the evidence they need.
Yeah, it makes sense that something like this is in place, but it's also very refreshing to know that this law enforcement unit is doing so much to keep us safe on the road. When we come back, we'll have much more on MCSAP's role on the road and also some data to go along with it. Kind of as a whole, how many inspections are being done? I don't know how they track this per year, per month. What is that looking like?
Yeah, it's annual, and they're different stats. I mean, every state has to report it to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Association and the Bureau of Transportation Statistics. So you're talking, probably 100,000 total inspections a year that they do, and that's counting the way stations and the roadside ones that they do. So they do a bunch.
So what are the most common violations that MCSAP is coming across, whether that be at the way stations or simply by pulling these trucks over?
Sure, and it varies, and some of the stats are different depending on where you look. But, what we're seeing is really if they find a problem that they deem as a safety issue, what they do, it's called an out-of-service violation, which means that truck is parked until it gets fixed. So they can put the brakes on a truck right there on the side of the road or right there at the way station until things get fixed. And those obviously are the biggest fines. So the biggest issue you see is 37% of the out-of-service violations involve brakes. You don't want a big truck with bad brakes.
No.
So that's, and that may be, and they can really spot that almost in the I think it's called the level 2 inspection they do. That's not the level 1 where they get underneath. They can almost visually see that, and then they can measure it, and then they can pull a truck off. Bad tires is a big issue. I mean, you can't you can't go down the road anymore and not see the tread from a tractor trailer, sitting in the middle of the road
right.
when they just fly off. So they'll look for that, just whether it's worn or whether it's torn anywhere. And then lots of issues with lights that they'll pull them off, whether it's blinkers, brake lights, everything like that. So about 40% of the out-of-service violations are brakes, 20% tires, lights 12%, and then cargo securement. We all hate when you drive behind a dump truck or something that doesn't have its load covered and stuff's flying out, and you're like, okay, is anyone doing anything about this? Well, these people are.
All right, good to know. Someone is. So, of course, these fines are possible. Is there anything that these drivers can do or not do that maybe they could face a more serious criminal charges, perhaps?
Oh, yeah. Obviously, we talked about the cell phones. That's one where the driver themselves get charged, and it's not the trucking company's not getting the problem. But for drivers, their issue is, there are a lot of rules that truck drivers have to follow. They have to, there are limits on the hours they can drive in a day. They have to keep logs of how far they're driving, how many miles, what their cargo is if they're dropping things off. So they have to document all of that. And drivers can get pulled out of service just like trucks can. So if they do a quick inspection, ask to see the guy's registration, they may not have the right license. They can pull drivers for all these types of things as well.
Yeah.
So, and nationally, and the scary thing is, nationally, the out-of-service rate for drivers is about 7%. So 7 out of 100 drivers out there right now that share the roads with us are unfit. And sometimes, it's not always alcohol. Sometimes it could be paperwork issues, but It's still, it's someone that has a lot of responsibility driving that large vehicle that's not following the rules. And for trucks themselves, the out-of-service rate nationally is 22%. So 1 out of 5 trucks right now is not roadworthy according to what the inspections say they need to be. It's a pretty scary thought. So, we could probably double the size of the state's motor carrier inspection program, and they'd still have plenty of work to do.
Right. And with that being said, do we have any data on maybe tractor-trailer related crashes or accidents? How common are these in North Carolina? Yeah,
North Carolina is also traditionally one of the states that has the highest number of big truck crashes and fatality rates involving trucks. So there's certainly a safety issue here, and that's not always, it's not always the truck driver's fault. We're not talking about a truck that maybe, doesn't have the brakes, but usually, they get caught up in something else. They're going to cause a lot of mayhem because of their sheer size.
Yeah, right. And I guess let's jump to maybe the positive side of this unit. Do we have any insight into the success of MCSAP thus far?
Well, I mean, if you just look at the simple fact that, 1 out of 5 of these trucks is in bad shape and shouldn't be driving, it's hard to quantify the difference that they're making, but you can only imagine if they're pulling 1 out of 5 trucks off the road before something really bad happens, they're making the road safer for all of us.
Yeah, definitely. Were there any other interesting statistics you guys came across while doing this story, or anything that surprised you maybe about the unit itself?
Just actually really how passionate the people on this unit are for that job. I mean, it's pretty amazing how much pride they take in this specific unit and what they can do and the lives they can save, out there on the roads.
All super interesting. Randall, thanks so much. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. You can find more podcasts from WRAL News at WRAL.com. Search podcast. From sports to true crime, there are plenty of shows to keep you informed and entertained. You can also find this WRAL Investigate story up now on WRAL.com as well. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.